Thanks for being with us. We've had some just brutal and terrible news out of Syria today, as dozens of civilians, dozens of children appear to have been killed in what looks like a chemical attack of some kind on a Syrian rebel-held area in the northwest part of that country. Our own Richard Engel filed a harrowing report on this attack tonight for NBC Nightly News. Here's part of what Richard filed. I will tell you, it is a bit intense.
These disturbing images taken just after the explosion. Witnesses say it was a chemical weapons attack, and in the video it appears to bear all the hallmarks. This boy using all his strength just to breathe. First responders doused the victims with water, stripped off their clothes to wash off what they said was a chemical weapon. Medics and volunteers in this rebel-controlled part of Syria rushed the injured to local clinics. They claimed Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime fired the banned chemical nerve agent sarin.
The gas attacks are continuing every day, and no one is doing anything to stop these gas attacks.
Other victims were taken to a makeshift clinic built in a cave to protect it. There, a father kissed his daughter goodbye. Nearby, this activist was recording what he was seeing, saying warplanes were still overhead. Then, hospitals are often targeted in this war that respects no conventions. Amazingly, the activist survived.
That is Richard Engel's reporting from NBC Nightly News tonight on just this incredible attack, what appears to be a chemical attack of some kind that killed dozens of civilians, including many kids, in Syria today. Now, one of the underreported, underdebated decisions of this new administration is that very quietly, they have been moving tons more American troops into Syria, into the Syrian civil war. Now, we're used to receiving blunt, terse little notifications from the Pentagon or sometimes from the White House directly whenever any significant number of U.S. troops are moved into war zones. That's the way they've always done it. In this new administration, though, they are not doing it that way. They are moving U.S. troops in considerable numbers, but they're not announcing it. Last week, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, who's on the Foreign Relations Committee, he literally posted a blog entry on the Huffington Post as his way of getting word out that these big troop deployments to Syria were happening. He said, quote, quietly, without any official notification, President Trump sent 500 new American troops into Syria. News reports suggest this deployment may just be the tip of the iceberg, with some saying that the plan is for hundreds more American troops to be added to the fight in coming weeks. Quote, nobody actually knows how many U.S. troops are inside Syria now because the administration has largely tried to keep the buildup a secret. So there are lots more American troops heading into the war in Syria, but the administration does not want to say so, and they have not been talking about these additional deployments. This is, whatever you think about the war in Syria, this is a fundamentally awkward thing for the basic structure of how our democracy works, right? This is an awkward thing for civilian control of the military, for Congress supposedly having the ultimate say-so over matters of war and peace, for the American people knowing about what U.S. troops are doing in our name, on our behalf, and our ability to be good citizens about that, to debate and ultimately decide through our democratic processes whether or not those fights are worth it, whether we want American troops engaged in these particular wars. And when it comes to Syria, that is going to be a particularly hard debate to have if we ever really have one. I mean, when it comes to whether or not U.S. troops should be fighting inside Syria in significant numbers, Americans have found that to be a very difficult question to ask. The last time the U.S. government confronted the issue of chemical weapons being used by the Syrian military against their own civilian population, last time this issue arose was in 2013. David Corn today did a really good roundup of how the man who's now our president reacted at the time to that crisis, the last chemical weapons in Syria crisis that really became a major issue in this country. He rounded up what his public statements were about how the U.S. should deal with that at the time. I mean, Syria obviously is a catastrophe, right? It is a moral and human and geostrategic catastrophe. It is a hard strategic question for the United States as to how to make that situation better. President Obama takes tons of heat to this day for not having sent U.S. troops into the war in Syria. But what he actually did, if you remember, is he asked Congress to authorize that. He asked Congress to authorize a war in Syria, if that is what they really wanted. And the way Congress responded was by doing nothing. President Obama asked Congress to authorize that, and they went, us? They would much prefer to criticize the White House, criticize anybody for what a disaster that war became, rather than get on the record themselves with an overt decision as to what should be done about it. I mean, most people with political aspirations would like to avoid making any overt declaration about what is the right move in Syria, what would improve things in Syria, what exactly should American troops do in Syria. Most ambitious politicos would stay out of that one, and they've proven that by the fact that they did stay out of it when they were overtly asked to make that call. But you know what? Donald Trump was not shy about it. As a real estate developer and a reality TV show star at the time, in May 2013, he was quite clear about what should be done. Congress didn't want to weigh on it, but he was very clear about what needed to happen, specifically about what should not happen. Here he was, May 2013, quote, "Syria is not our problem." Donald Trump, May 2013. By the following month, by June, quote, "We should stay the hell out of Syria. What will we get for our lives and billions? Zero." That was June. By August, quote, "Stay out of Syria." By September, he was having back and forth with people on Twitter about it. He was posting a public reply to @BigSexyBDavis. "Mr. Trump would attack Syria or no?" asks Big Sexy B Davis. Mr. Trump responds, "No." In case that colloquy with Big Sexy B Davis was not clear enough, 15 minutes later, Trump posts again, quote, "What I am saying is stay out of Syria." Okay, got it. Then 2 days later, "Do not attack Syria." Then 2 hours later, this time in all caps, "Do not attack Syria." September 7th, President Obama, "Do not attack Syria." September 9th, "Don't attack Syria." September 11th, "Forget Syria." September 13th, "Stay out of Syria." You know, a lot of people in public life, Congress itself in 2013 did not want to go on the record about what the United States should or should not do in Syria. President Obama went to Congress in August and explicitly asked them for authorization. "Oh, you are so mad at me about not having a war in Syria? You want a war in Syria? Authorize it, and we will go." Congress's response to that was no comment. They decided they didn't want to vote on that. They really did not want to be on the record saying what ought to happen in Syria. But Donald Trump, not afraid, very clear about it, with Big Sexy B Davis and everybody else within sight and sound of his Twitter account. Totally clear. Stay out of Syria. Well, now, after today's horrific attack in Syria, the White House has issued a response in President Trump's name. His response to the Syrian attack today is to blame President Obama for not attacking Syria back in the day. Quoting from today's presidential statement, quote, "These heinous actions by the Bashar al-Assad regime are a consequence of the past administration's weakness and irresolution." The White House response to this new attack in Syria is to attribute it to President Obama because President Obama, quote, "did nothing in Syria." President Obama, in fact, did not invade Syria. Maybe because he was persuaded by Donald Trump's arguments against it at the time when he was, talking about it on Twitter with Big Sexy B Davis and everybody else, saying that Syria is, quote, "not our problem," that Syria is, quote, "their war." Now he's saying everything that's happening now is because Obama didn't go in. But you know what? Hypocrisy is cheap. Saying one thing and doing another, condemning other people for things that you yourself are guilty of. We wouldn't have half the parables in the Bible if human beings had come up with a cure for that particular human affliction anytime in history. But the thing that is, in fact, new under the sun, a thing that is new about this new administration that we're just figuring out now, is their unusual decision-making process about when they choose to operate behind closed doors and when they choose to act out in the open. I mean, every administration likes to play up its strengths and downplay its weaknesses, but their behavior is weirder than that. I mean, senators in the Foreign Relations Committee are now writing their own essays, making their own blog post public disclosures about U.S. troops being moved by the hundreds into war zones, and they're having to do that because the White House is not telling us that information on its own anymore. That's a strange decision on their part. I mean, eventually we're going to find out. These are not covert actions that these U.S. troops are taking. These deployments are not classified. So by just not announcing when troops are going and what troops are going, they're not keeping the information actually secret. We're going to find out. They just obscure it a little. They don't draw attention to it. They buy themselves a little time in which they don't have to answer any questions about what they're doing. By not announcing these troop deployments, the White House avoids, or at least delays, there being any political fight in Washington over whether or not there's a good strategic reason to send more American troops into the middle of that Syrian war, and why the president has changed his mind about that. I mean, it is presumably easier to blame the previous administration for bad things that happen somewhere than it is to argue for what you want to do differently about it. So they have come up with this closed-door strategy, on Syria at least, where they are not arguing for what they're doing. They're not announcing it or explaining it. They're not making a case for themselves. They're just doing stuff without saying that that's what they're doing. And that's not the way it is supposed to work when it comes to Americans putting their lives in danger in war. And so that is where it stands out the most. But that is not just their MO on national security matters. The new administration does this on other stuff. For example, the president has also just signed some of the furthest-reaching legislation of his young presidency. He just signed a bill that lets your internet provider sell all of your personal data, your online usage data, all your financial data, everything they've got on you. They can sell it without your permission. They can sell it even without your knowledge. And this is a big deal. This is going to be a big deal for all of us that your internet service provider can do this. I mean, this is a material change from the way your data is handled now. I mean, it's one thing if there are specific websites or specific apps that collect data about you and what you do online, right? Whether or not you care about that, if you do care about it, you have options. You have options as a consumer to choose to not use those websites or not use those apps if you don't like their privacy policies, if you don't like how they deal with your information. But your internet provider, it's not like most of us have a lot of choice when it comes to who you get your internet service from. At my house in Western Massachusetts, there's precisely one way that internet can come into my house. It's through DSL. And there's one company from which I can purchase that DSL service. That's it. But now, thanks to this bill that President Trump just signed, my internet provider and yours can take your browsing history, can take their record of everything you have ever downloaded, can take their data about everything you have ever done online, all of your financial information, everything they have got on you, and they can sell it to anyone without even giving you notice that they're doing so, let alone allowing you the opportunity to object. And if you don't have a lot of choice of internet providers, which a lot of people don't, your only option for opting out of this system, for protecting yourself at all, is to not use the internet? I mean, really? But that change is now official, and it is thanks to President Trump and Republicans in Congress. Basically a party line vote by Republicans in the House and Senate to pass this thing, and President Trump just signed it. And as you might imagine, this thing is radically unpopular. Even the radically pro-Donald Trump corners of the internet, at the Donald subreddit, which is a famously pro-Trump community online. Even there, Trump supporters are freaking out that he just signed this thing. YouGov just did a national poll on this thing. They described what the bill does, then asked people nationwide, should Donald Trump sign this bill or should he veto it? 11% of people said Donald Trump should sign this bill. The proportion of people who said that Donald Trump should veto it? 74%. 74% say do not sign the bill. He signed the bill. And courage, he did it behind closed doors. No photo op, no standalone press release, no awkward ceremony where he gets up and starts to walk away because he actually forgot to sign the bill and then he has to come back afterwards and make sure he really signs it. No, this one, they did it behind closed doors. No press, no tweets, no cameras, because they do not want to talk about it. They do not want to defend it. No human wants this. And so they signed it in secret. I mean, we're still new here, right? We're still figuring them out. But we're starting to figure out a little bit about how they do things. Do you remember this big photo op day? Did you see these images, right? Get the women in here. This was the signing of the Promoting Women in Entrepreneurship Act. That same day, they also signed the Inspiring the Next Space Pioneers Act. Awesome. Very well staged photo ops. Those were executive orders that did absolutely nothing substantive whatsoever to promote women entrepreneurship or to promote women pioneers in space. Literally not a single dollar or cent moved left, right, up, or down because of either of those all-for-show executive orders. But they did put on a show. They got their big photo ops. And then that same day, they cleared all the extras out of the room, pushed out all the cameras, closed the doors, and very quietly that same day, the president also signed a very consequential bill, which makes it easier for seriously mentally ill people to buy firearms. Because you remember how everybody campaigned in November on the More Guns for the Seriously Mentally Ill platform, right? No, that one they did not want to talk about. That one, they wanted to do it for some reason, but they knew they couldn't defend it. So that one they did in secret. They still did it, but they did it in secret. We are starting to learn the ropes with these guys. They will make a show out of anything they want to. But we are also learning that they are unusually afraid. They are deathly afraid to talk about their own actions that they can't defend, where they are acting not because a single identifiable human being wants them to act that way, but for some other reason they still feel compelled. Whether it's guns or the internet or the secret escalation in Syria that they cannot defend and that before he was president he was so opposed to. Whether it's any of those issues, we now are starting to figure out what they're doing and why they are doing it when they retreat behind closed doors to do so much of what they do. And we've got a scoop on that tonight. We've got some leaked documents out of the EPA that have never been seen in public eye before, but we've got them tonight. That's coming up. Stay with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.